Hello everyone! Quick, pick a coin. It doesn't matter, I use an ego. But today, we're talking coins. While Runa had cards and dices, Limbus has coins. And gacha. We love RNG. However, they managed to make it fair. Somewhat. And with a system with only 2 outcomes, they managed to make it somewhat complex. How do clashes work? Who has the best clashes? Are negative and positive coins the same? Those are some of the questions I'll try to answer in this video. So let's make an analysis of the coin system and its depths, from damage to clashes and probabilities. But let's start with a proper introduction on coins and how they work. All skills in the game have a certain number of coins. When the skill is used, those coins are flipped, ending in either heads or tails, the probabilities being influenced by the unit's SP. Those coins have a power associated to them, which is added to the skill's base power when landing on heads. The coins are used in 2 situations, for damage and for clashes. When damaging an opponent, coins are used as hits, each coin being 1 hit, even if the animation can be multiple hits. For each hit, its coin is rolled, the result being added to the current skill power. This means that subsequent coins are added on top of the previous ones. However, when 2 unit skills target each other, they clash. During a clash, coins are rolled all at the same time, the result being all coins results added to the skill's base power plus other modifiers, but let's not care about that. The skill with the highest result destroys one of the other skill's coin. If there is still some coins, it repeats with the remaining coins, otherwise the skill with remaining coins wins the clash and damages the opponent with the remaining coins. Note that coins are destroyed in increasing order, so the coin numbered as the first coin is destroyed first. So that's about it for the introduction. Now let's get into the complexity of it. Coins being used to both damage and clash create a weird sense of balance. In clashes, you want the higher result possible. In damage, well, you still want a high result, but what you care more about is the total damage, which means that most of the time, the more coins you have, the better. If you have only 1 coin, which can go up to 16, and 3 coins, which can go up to 10, the 3 coins will deal more damage than the single coin one. Of course, this doesn't take into account all coin effects and all other modifiers. But basically, single coin skills tend to have a higher total power, which is better for clashing. That's not the only reason as for why they would usually be better. So now let's get into probability. Sorry, I'm having trouble with this. So let's get into probabilities. If you don't know how probabilities work, I'm not gonna make a old school program anyway. In Limbus, probabilities for coins are affected mostly, if not only, by the unit's sanity points. 1 point is 1 more % chance of rolling heads. So at 45 SP, the maximum, you have a 95% chance of rolling heads. Easy. Simple. We like. In the same way, at minus 45 SP, the minimum, you have a 5% chance of rolling heads. And you panic. Or corrode, which is less nice. But more about that later. So let's take a skill with a base power of 4 and a single coin having plus 12, like Molai Sang's skill 2. At 45 SP, you have a 95% chance of getting 16 and 5% chance of getting 4. Simple. Now for comparison, let's take a 3 coin skill like Gripfout's skill 2, having a base power of 4 and plus 4 coin power. The minimum you can roll is 4 and the max is 16, just like the other skill. However, the probabilities are not the same. Since each coin has 95% chance of rolling heads, the chances to get the 3 heads you need for the maximum power are 95% to the power of 3 or 95% times 95% times 95%. So around 85.7%. This means you have about 3 times more chances to miss the maximum result. However, the same can be said for the minimum result. Since coins have a 5% chance of rolling tails, the first skill has 5% chance of having a total power of 4. For the other one, it has 5% to the power of 3, so 0.01% chance of getting 4. So very close to none. For reference, the second skill has around 13.5% chance to roll 12 and 0.7% to roll for 8. Numbers are rounded down, so please don't mention it doesn't add up to 100. So which is better for clashing? Well, the answer you probably expected, it depends. But just on the opponent's skill. It's also influenced by sanity, so you could calculate the probabilities as well, but ideally you'd want a turn to take less than an hour, so you can just base yourself on the max power. In our case, if the opponent's skill max power is between 12 and 15, you have a higher chance of winning with 1 coin rather than with 3, as you have a 95% chance to roll 16 on the first skill compared to 85.7% for the other. If it's lower than 12, you have a higher chance winning with the second skill, as you have 85.7 plus 13.5% chance or 99.2% of rolling 12 or higher compared to still 95% for the other. So as you can see, single coin skills tend to have an advantage in clashing against skills with higher power. This being accentuated further by those skills usually having higher power to compensate for the number of coins. More coins often means more consistency and also more chances if you got unlucky. Though if we are talking about clashes, there are a few other parameters to take into account, but most are status effects. So the last thing I want to mention for Clash in particular is the offense levels, which increase the clash power of a skill if it's higher than the opponent, 1 point per 3 levels difference. So now that it's settled, let's get into details per ID. I want to go that they are really straightforward, but for IDs, how do I present this? I could give you the IDs clashes, but I feel like it wouldn't do justice to coin numbers. So I thought of properly calculating the expected value. However, as it takes into account the results statistically, the coin numbers don't really matter. But well, even if Ting Tang Anglu's Mutilate gets 5 every 20 flips, W-Don's Rip Space should pretty much never get min roll, just getting 25 instead of 31 every 4 times. In the end, it just complexified the thing for not much results, so I went back to just taking the maximum clash power each skill can attain if all its conditions are met. Some are harder to fulfill, but there is a limit to relativism, so let's just roll. This will include ID's passive if they increase power, opponent's clash power reduction, which is counted as effective clash power increase, and stuff like offense level gains and statuses like Book of Vengeance or Fanatic if it's in their passive, or Declared Duel, which is a lasting status. All the individual information can be found in the Google Doc in the description. So before we get into details per sinners, you want a tier list? It has been a while, so there you go. Here's the ranking of IDs per medium clash power. This is the clash power you can expect from an ID's skills in general if you met the conditions. I took all skills max values and calculated the average of them, taking into account the skills amount as coefficients. So that's the result I got. It has a good spread of 2 stars among the 3 stars, past a certain point at least, Sang Ryoshu being the highest thanks to Declared Duel. Also of note is Ishmael having the highest clashes out of base IDs, thanks to single coins with high values. But just remember that not all of these rankings are as easy to get, some having tougher requirements, like being under 50% HP. Also, they don't take into account the skill's offense levels, so a few IDs could get up to 1 more clash power, especially older IDs. Now let's review each sinner's potential in order, starting with Yisang. Yisang's IDs are pretty average at clashing overall, his base ID being the lowest clashing positive ID in the game. His 7 ID takes into account the passive, giving him effectively 2 clashing power increase, meaning that without it, it can be weaker. His best ID is the Blade Lineage one, having not only high base power, but also insane coin power increase with its passive. As a note, the Sinner's average max clash power is the average of all their ID's average max clash power. It's too broad to be of real use, but it's still a fun touch. Faust's 2 stars are pretty average, and her base ID has very low clashes. Her 3 stars can all go above average, except her N-Corp ID, who suffers from a low skill ceiling on skill 3 and power creep. Note that every great ID takes into account the -2 clash power from debuffs in her passive. Don Quixote's IDs are pretty good at clashing. Outside of N Corp, all of her IDs are in the higher part of the basket in their respective category. Of note, Middle Dawn takes into account the Vengeance Mark passive, as well as 2 clash power from increased offense levels on skill 2 and 3. Lantern Dawn takes passive into account for 1 more clash power, and Sang Dawn declares duel. Ryoshu is overall slightly more damage than clashes. Her 2 stars are stronger at it than her 3 stars outside W Corp, which has very high clashes outside skill 1. Seven and Liu especially can have some high clashes with strong skills. Meursault is a tank, therefore he obviously doesn't have high clashes, until he got a BLID, which, even with a skill 3 not made for winning clashes, and I put it at 12 because sanity, still capitalized from high powered skill 1 and 2, though the value does take Swordplay of the Homeland buff on himself, buffing him quite a bit. But otherwise, his IDs don't clash too well, especially N Corp, who here takes into account his passive for 2 power-ups. His middle ID takes Vengeance Mark into account too. Honglu has subpar 2 stars for clashing, barely outclassing his base ID. However, his 3 stars IDs really shine, with high base power and coin power on most skill 2 and 3. The funny thing being that his skill 1 still are mid-rolling single coins. His cliff is in the slightly above average parts of the ranking overall on his base and 2 stars, his N-Corp ID taking +1 clash power from passive into account though. In his 3 stars, Hardcorp with its high coins does fall a bit, Sunshower is not made for clashing at all, but his Pequod ID can get very high clashes with his passive, which can get him 9 offense levels, translating into 3 additional clash power on all his skills, if you don't clash against higher leveled enemies at least. Ishmael has the highest clashing base ID, which outclassed most 2 stars, including hers, her She ID being saved by her skill 2 doubling its coins in clashes too. Her 3 stars, however, are pretty mixed. Her clash power is calculated with 6 Gloom Rays for her Hardcorp ID, so +2 attack power. But even without that, it can clash pretty well, as high as her Liu ID. Her Captain ID is saved by the high potential power on baiting targets for skill 3. Rodion has the same situation as Honglu, minus the base ID. Her N-Corp ID being the lowest 2 stars without her passive, and her Zwei ID being the lowest otherwise. In 3 stars, while Rose Spawner suffer from skill 2 coins and DHE having high coin numbers, her Kurokumo ID can roll very high thanks to skill 3 and gold skill 1, and her Liu ID can roll insanely high in burn comps, especially with her passive, which can grant to herself an attack power up. Sinclair doesn't clash. Almost none of his IDs can roll very high, outside of a few skill 3s, which are brought down by the other 2 skills. However, not only his N-Corp ID can clash for very high on skill 2 and 3, his Sank ID is one of the best clasher in the game, with very easy conditions to fulfill for max power and declare duel. Otis IDs are mixed. Both of her older IDs are average at best, her 7 ID being pretty subpar without rupture for skill 3, only saved by skill 2 even with her clash power reduction on the opponent, but her more recent IDs are way better at it. Her Sank ID is the best 2 star with declared duel, and Magic Bullet having the highest clashes in the game. Not only her skill 1 and 2 can roll insanely high, her skill 3 can get up to 40 with 7 bullets. It does fall down slightly without ammo though, and really needs burn. And to finish, Gregor doesn't have much in particular. His IDs are overall below average, having more single coin skill 2s than skill 1s. His best ID is Twin Hook, with high rolling 2 coins skill 2 and 3, but even then it doesn't roll that high. So that's it for the IDs. A reminder that all those calculations were done with 45 sanity in mind, which is not always the case. All skills are influenced by sanity loss, but the main difference that can give an ID an edge then is its skill's base power. An ID with higher base power will get higher values in lower sanity than other with lower base power. However, only a few IDs really benefit from it, outside minus con IDs, especially the old ones, as they have been balancing around lower base values recently. For example, back when 45 sanity was only around 75% chance of heads, BLE Sang's high power was an advantage in fights' early stages. Now I'd like to talk about another point: negative coins. Coins adding a negative value, effectively reducing the skill's power. Skills with those coins are designed to have higher base power, which is then reduced if the coins roll heads. Two IDs are concerned by it as of this video: Corp Sinclair and Sang Ryoshu. Blade Lineage Meursault also has a negative coin for skill 3, but you want to lose a clash there, so we don't care about it. Those two IDs have ways to reduce their sanity, more or less effectively, but that's not what I want to talk about here. We are talking clashes. So are they less efficient in clashing? Well, there's a theory and a practice. In theory, negative coins imply that the skill has its max power from the start. So if you use it for damage and roll all tails, it will apply the max power every time, contrary to positive coins, where it's increasing after each coin. This means in theory, the base power shouldn't be too high with more coins to avoid ridiculous damage. In practice, we have the balanced one, Sang Ryoshu, whose clashes are questionable because of this, and the broken one, where they seem to have forgotten about this part. But overall, there are two major differences with positive coins. The first one is that getting at minus 45 SP means corroding, which can be inconvenient a lot of the time. The good thing being that most ego corrosions have negative coins, but that means you'll rarely have more than 85 to 90% chances of flipping tails. So that's the bad part. The other difference is the way clashes work. Because losing a clash destroys the coin, if you lose a part of the clash with positive coins, your potential maximum power for the remainder of the clash will decrease. However, that's not the case with negative coins. In fact, it will increase the chances of getting the max power. So while the chances of winning a clash don't vary by itself at first, during the clash it will decrease for positive coins while increasing for negative coins. This does translate into less damage anyway, but better win the clash for lower damage than outright losing it, except for some IDs. All this means that in design, negative coins aren't favored in clashes. They are just less consistent, because negative sanity is way harder to manage, and you can't just stack at minus 45 SP. Yet. But now they are very careful about negative coins IDs, it seems, since we only got 2 of them as I'm doing this video. But there is something that they've gotta be even more careful about, that hasn't even made it into the game yet, and might become very powerful if introduced. Multiplicative coins. They are mentioned in the tutorial and somewhat in assets, so they have at the very least considered the possibility. As for how they would work, it's simple. The coins would have a multiplier, which would be applied when landing on head. So let's take a skill with a base power of 4 and 2 coins having times 2. Landing heads on the first coin would make it an 8, and then landing heads on the second would make it 16. Simple. However, making things multiplicative can quickly lead to exponential problems. If we add another coin to our imaginary skill, it would then roll up to 32, which is very high. This would have multiple implications as well. First, any skill-based power increase would have incredibly strong results. Let's take our skill again. Adding 1 base power up would make it 5 times 2, so 10, times 2 again, 20, which is a good jump already. As a reminder, attack power up, for example, adds final power, which would make it 4 times 2 plus 1 and 4 times 4 plus 1 instead, so 9 and 17 instead of 10 and 20. So this would make a difference. Right now the difference is almost non-existent outside negative skills if you go down to 0 less power. Another big difference would be for coin increase status. Assets can be found in the game for multiplicative coin increase and decrease. If we take back our skill, a coin increase will make it times 3 instead of times 2. So it would make the skill go 4 times 3, so 12, times 3, so 36. That's higher than most egos. And that's for 2 coins. Let's finish by imagining a skill, having 1 base power and 4 coins having times 2. This would make it roll up to 16. 2, 4, 8, 16. Let's add 1 base power. it becomes 4, 8, 16, 32. 70 damage. Let's go back to 1 base power only, and this time add 1 coin power. 3, 9, 27, 81. Yeah, 81. Also 120 total damage, so it's just slightly above the other third skills. If you add 1 base power and 1 con power, 618, 54, 162, 240 total. As I said, things become exponential, but we have yet to see those skills come into existence. Maybe it won't be for another year or two, or maybe they will just cancel the ID. In conclusion, the coin system is interesting. It is already in itself pretty complex, leading to many players' headaches on tutorials, which is only one part of the world combat system of Limbus. The sanity system influencing the probabilities being what allows it to work so well, without being too frustrating, while adding more complexity. Clashes are very important for both damage and survival, since winning one is equivalent to cancelling a skill, so it is a key point of the game. However, this often means that it's better than tanking, and often mandatory in situations where opponents use attacks with multiple targets. This means IDs with high clashes are very valuable, and they've been ramping up IDs Clash Power in Season 3. They have yet to add more IDs based on low sanity though, so it's hard to know if they want them to be able to clash or not, but there could be ways for them to create a lot more things to make them interesting while clashing. In the same way, we'll see if they add multiply coins, or even divide, exponentials, square roots, imaginary coins, variable coins, coins. And that concludes this video. Thanks for watching. Final message, Season 4 got officially announced, so I prepare the Season 3 review before it comes out. I'll do a stream this Friday to re-rank the season's IDs if you want to check and discuss. Don't hesitate to subscribe and check the community section for more news. In any case, see you next time and keep your sanity high in this slow descent into the inferno.